Hey guys, Minecraft Maestro here, and today I'm going to be showing you how to obtain all 16 different colours of dye in Minecraft. Now, if you didn't already know this, dyes actually have way more applications than you may have already thought. So obviously you can do things like changing the colour of wool, glass, and stain clay, but there's also a couple more obscure things that people don't often know about. This is that you can change the colour of dogs' collars, so you got your little dog there and you can change what he looks like to make it sort of like more personalised to you. And you also change the colour of sheep, so when you shear them, they automatically give you the wool that's dyed back. And that's a really cool idea. It's also good if you're making some sort of like big pixel art. You can get the colour of wool you need really quickly. So anyway guys, let's get into how to make them. The dyes are split into two groups, primary and secondary. The primary dyes can be found through the Minecraft environment. So this could be bone meal from skeletons, or cactus green from a cactus, or it could be a flower, for example rose red or the yellow dye. Now all of these dyes, like I said, can be found in the environment and therefore they're primary. Now the secondary dyes have to be obtained through crafting dyes with another dye. So for example, to get lime dye, you need to craft cactus green and bone meal together in a crafting table, or you can do it in your inventory actually in this bit here, but I'll go through that later on in the video. So the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to go through the dyes which can be found only through the environment, so the ones you see in front of me here. Then I'm going to be going through the dyes that can be found through crafting them and through the environment, and then I'm going to be going over the final four, or five, I can't remember, that can only be found through crafting. Now I'm going to be going through those later, so first of all let's get to the first dye. The first dye I'm going to be going through is bone meal. Now bone meal, as you can see there, is the dye that turns things white, and as the name suggests, it's found through getting bone. Now bone is primarily found through killing skeletons, however can also be found in things like pyramid chests, and I believe dungeons as well. So anyway, let's get into how you get it. So you're going to want to get your bone, and simply put it in your crafting grid. That can be done in the crafting table as well. But once you get your bone meal there, it gives you 3 back from the bone, and you can use this as a dye. So anyway, let's get into the next one. The second dye I'm going to be going over is cactus green. Now cactus green is the darker of the two green dyes, and it shouldn't be confused with lime dye, which I'll be going over later on. Now cactus green, as the name suggests once again, is obtained through cactuses. Now unfortunately you don't actually have to put the cactus in a crafting table to get it. You actually have to smelt it, so it will take up a little bit of sort of like smelty stuff like coal or something. So as you can see here, you put the cactus in the furnace and it will give you 1 cactus green out of it. So there you go, that's how you get your cactus green. On to the next dye. The next dye I'm going to be going over is rose red. Now as the name suggests, you get it from roses, but you can also get it from other plants as well. So there's the red tulip and the poppy, and obviously the rose bush. Now the rose bush will give you 2 dye I believe, and the 2 down here will give you 1 dye, and that's respectively in the crafting table. So let's get into the next dye. The fourth dye I'm going to be going over is dandelion yellow. Now dandelion yellow can be found, as the name suggests, from dandelions, however it can also be found from sunflowers here. Now the sunflower will give you 2 dye, and the dandelion will give you 1. Now both of these can be found randomly in the Minecraft environment, however as with all flowers that we're going to be using today, can mainly be found in the flower biomes, which are like the foresty biomes with loads of flowers in them. So if you find one of them, if you need dyes, you're lucked out. The next dye I'm going to be going over is lapis lazuli. Now as you can see there, lapis lazuli is the blue dye. This isn't to be confused with the light blue dye, which I'll be going over later on. Now in my opinion, lapis lazuli is one of the harder dyes to find, and this is because you actually have to go in deep into the mines to get it. Now although it can be found at I believe level 72 or below, so you can find it quite high, but at like the iron coal level that's like you sort of find early on in the game, it's extremely rare, so you're not really going to find it very often there. So you're going to have to go down sort of like diamond gold level to find it, and this means it is extremely rare. Now it's often compared to sort of like diamond in its rarity, however once mined the block will drop 4 to 8 lapis lazuli, and if you use fortune 3 you can actually get up to 32 lapis lazuli out of 1 ore block, which is kind of cool fact, and I didn't really know you could get that much. So it is as rare as diamond, but if you do find a vein of it, then you're going to get a heck of a lot of lapis lazuli dye. Now as of 1.8 you can actually use lapis lazuli for enchanting as well, so you're not going to have as much of it lying around as you used to pre 1.8, but it's still a really like nice dye, and it can actually be combined with a lot of things to make new like secondary dyes, so I'll be going over that later on. The sixth dye I'm going to be going over is cocoa beans. Now cocoa beans are the brown dye, as you can see here, and can be found in 2 places. Now this is dungeons and jungle biomes. Now on jungle biomes they can be found under the shorter trees, and they'll be in sort of like a pod like this. Now these can have different like varying sizes of pods, and the bigger the pod, this is the biggest variety, will give out larger amounts of seeds. So if I give you this here, I got 3 cocoa beans out of this, and they can also be found in dungeons, as I believe 1 to 5 sort of like little clusters. And to get this, as you can see there, just break the pod and you'll get it. So like I said, this is one of the harder dyes to get because you will have to find either a dungeon or a jungle biome, both of which are extremely rare. So on to the next dye. The next dye I'm going to be going over is an ink sac. Now, as you can see there, the ink sac is the black dye, and is in my opinion one of the easiest dyes to find. Now this is because it can actually be found in any water source. Now, obviously the water source has to be quite big, so you won't find like a little stream underground, but any sort of like large lake or river will have them in. And this is squids. Now squids, as you can see in some, well that's a good idea there actually, one of them has actually died. So there, see it's got dropped ink sacs there, XP as well. So the ink sacs there, it can drop I believe 1 to 3 upon death. And like I said, squids are really easy to find, so not that difficult to get. And black can also make some secondary dyes as well, so you see that later on. Now, as you see there, the squids, they will die quite easily, but you might need a water breathing potion to get some of them. And quick like a bit of trivia here, squids can actually be killed by the guardians, like the water monument ones, so that's kind of cool. The ocean monuments they're called, that's it. Get stuck with the new 1.8 stuff, but anyway, yeah, so on to the next dye. The following 5 dyes I'm going to be going over can both be found in the environment like the first 6 dyes I went over, and also be crafted using these first 6 dyes. Now, this is kind of cool, and it does make them a little bit easier to get, because some of the first 6 dyes are actually quite easy, so this should make them a little bit easier to get. Anyway, the first dye I'm going to be going over is the orange dye, and now this is primarily found through tulips like this one here. Now if you actually get a tulip, it's an orange tulip, has to be orange, you put it in your crafting grid and you'll get 1 orange dye. This is the only way you can get the orange dye through the environment. However, it can also be crafted. Now to get it crafted, you need to have 1 yellow dye and 1 red dye. Now putting this together, I believe will give you 2 orange dye. This is kind of cool, and it is like a bit of an easier way to get it if you've got loads of red and yellow flowers, and that'll get you loads of orange dye. So on to the next one. The next dye I'm going to be going over is light blue dye. Now light blue dye can be crafted by combining bone meal and lapis lazuli in a crafting grid. Now this will give you 2 light blue dye. Another way of getting light blue dye is by finding a blue orchid. Now putting a blue orchid in a crafting bench will give you 1 light blue dye, and then you have your dye. So on to the next one. The next dye I'm going to be going over is the magenta dye. Now the magenta dye can be found in the environment through either the allium or the lilac flowers. Now the lilac flower will give you 2 magenta dye, and the allium flower will give you 1. Now you can also craft the magenta dye. Now you can do this in 2 crafting recipes, both of which are rather pricey actually. So you can have 2 rose red, 1 lapis lazuli, and 1 bone meal. Now as you can see there, you got 4 magenta dye from that, so you get quite a lot out of it. It's like every dye you get gets 1 out, but it's also quite pricey with the lapis lazuli and the bone meal there. So it's sort of like you might want to use this one, or you might want to use this one. Now this one here involves a purple dye, which is a secondary dye, meaning it can only be crafted, it cannot be found in the environment, and pink dye, which I'll be going over later on. Now putting these 2 together will also give you 2 magenta dye. So both of those recipes will give you like the same amount of dye as you put into it. However, they're both quite pricey, involving either secondary dyes or lapis lazuli. So anyway, on to the next dye. The next dye I'm going to be going over is pink dye. Now pink dye can be found in the environment through the pink tulip or the peony. Now the peony will give 2 dye I believe, as with all of the other 2 block high plants. So you go 2 pink dye and a pink tulip, and there gives you 1. Now it can also be crafted using 1 rose red and 1 bone meal I believe actually, so rose red and bone meal. Now that will give you 2 pink dye out of that, so it's another like way of getting it there. So on to the next one. The next dye I'm going to be going over is the light grey dye. Now the light grey dye can be found in the environment in the white tulip, the oxeye daisy, and the azure bluette. Now I believe all of these will give 1 light grey dye when crafted in a crafting bench. Yep, as you can see there. Now the light grey dye can also be crafted, so if you get 1 grey dye, now grey dye is actually a secondary dye, so it's quite an expensive, difficult to get recipe this, and that with the bone meal will give you 2 light grey dye, and you can also get it through doing 1 ink sac and 2 bone meal, like that. It can be any way you want really, it doesn't have to be like that. How there you get grey dye like that. But I mean, you give you 3 grey dye because you're putting 3 things into it. So like with the other ones, you will get the amount of dye you get in, will get back out again, so that's kind of cool. But anyway, on to the next dye. The final 4 dyes I'm going to be showing you today are referred to as secondary dyes, and this means they can only be crafted. Now the first one I'm going to be showing you is cyan dye. Now for this you're going to need 1 lapis lazuli and 1 cactus green, and this will give you 2 cyan dye. Just put these in here, there we go, 2 cyan dye. So on to the next one. The next dye I'm going to be showing you is the purple dye. Now once again, as these are secondary dyes, this can only be crafted. Now to craft this purple dye you're going to want 1 rose red and 1 lapis lazuli. Now this will give you 2 purple dye out of it. There we go, 2 purple dye. So on to the next one. The second to last dye I'm going to be going over today is the grey dye. Now this is not to be confused with the light grey dye that went over earlier. Now to get this grey dye you're going to want to combine 1 ink sac with 1 bone meal in a crafting bench, like this one over here. So I put these 2 in here and you get 2 grey dye out of this. So let's get on to the next one. And last but not least today we have the lime dye. This is not to confuse with the cactus green dye that was over there, one of the first ones we did. So to get this lime dye, it's a secondary dye, so you're going to want to craft it. It cannot be found in the environment. And yes, you're going to want 1 bone meal and 1 cactus green. Now cactus green you actually have to cook, so it's kind of difficult to get, but I went over that earlier on in the video. So there's lime dye here, and that'll give you 2 lime dye for crafting those. So anyway, that's it guys. So I think in the little segment I'm going to do in a minute, I'm going to actually show you some quick tips on how to get these, and a little bit of trivia if you're going to like what you're going to use them for and how you're actually going to do that. So I'll see you in a minute guys. Okay guys, in front of me now I have just a few of the many uses of the dyes I've shown you today. So we have dyeing like the collars of dogs here, and also carpets, wools, the glass and the stained clay. Now to get the carpets, obviously you're going to need to combine 2 of the related wool. And also, if you're actually going to try and get some wools, I believe the following ones can be found in sheep. So there is white, black, the dark grey, light grey, and believe it or not, pink. Now I believe there's something ridiculous like a 1 in 250 chance of a group of sheep spawning as pink. But it's kind of cool, and I believe they can spawn as one of the blues as well. I can't remember which one, I believe it's this one. But there's kind of a little bit of cool trivia there for you guys. So if you are looking for like a specific colour of wool and not one of the other like uses of the dyes, then going to find the coloured sheep or actually dyeing the sheep to get that colour of wool is probably the better option for you. But for the other ones, for example the stained clays, that's probably easiest to find in the mesa biome. However, they are one of the rarest biomes to find. But if you do find one of them and you need this kind of stained clay stuff, you're really lucky because they're going to be really useful for you. Anyway guys, that's it for this video. If you have any questions about dyes or just like their uses in general, or even just YouTube in general and stuff like that, then just don't forget to post them in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer them for you. If you have enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, favourite and subscribe for more Minecraft content like this. And comment down below any more videos you'd like me to do. I'm open to any suggestions and like just proves tips and stuff on how to improve my channel. So that's it for this video guys. Bye!